what we're going to do here is show how you install the pole, the individual pole. And at the first part is just the top, the piece that's going to actually hit the ceiling. As you can see, if you look carefully, there's a piece of rubber that's an 1/8 inch thick, and it's on here, and it has been drilled such that it allows for the holes in the back. And these holes are the very holes that are going to go up against the ceiling and into the joist that has to be found in the ceiling, so that you can secure this top piece solidly into the joist when it's up against the ceiling. Now, the rubber portion is to protect the ceiling itself, and it also provides additional grip, which is really important, so that it won't slide, it won't move on you once you have it in place. In terms of actually installing this piece, as you can see, there's some holes here, and then of course this top piece, this goes right into this portion. Pardon me, that's not true. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Anyway, back to this. This is the two extender pieces we have. You have the long one and the short one. If this turned around, it should be this way, because this top piece goes into this hole just as this top piece goes in this hole. Now, this extender piece, being it shorter, as you can easily see, is for 8-foot ceilings, along with the pole, of course. And then the longer one is for 9-foot ceilings. One additional point to that is that this shorter one comes standard with the pole. Now, if you do have the 9-foot ceilings, this longer piece would be sold separately. There'd be an additional charge for that. Okay, so let's set this up as if we have an 8-foot ceiling, which is exactly what we're dealing with in this room. So at this point, the extender piece would go onto this portion, and you can see the holes have to line up as they do. Now, there's a couple of bolts that we use. This is the one bolt, and as you can see, this bolt is a little bit longer, and it's going to account for being actually inside and taking up the width of the pole itself. You'll see what I mean in a minute. In terms of actually installing it, we have these special washers that are bent, and the reason they're bent is to allow for the bend in the pole itself, because it's round. That goes through there. That went through there pretty simply and sweetly this time, and then this one, of course, bent, and it goes on such that it'll grab the pole. Really makes it nice in terms of holding the pole itself. Our manufacturer, of course, came up with that and really liked that. Anyway, so you get the top piece secured. Now, it's going to feel a little bit loose, but of course we're not really tightening with the wrenches, and also once it hits the ceiling, everything tightens up because of the pressure. So here we go, and we put this up here, and this will slide in. I know that you have to have 2 holes showing, so I'm going to bring this down to 3, to the 3rd hole. So there's 2 holes showing, as you can see from the camera angle there, and then you hopefully we'll be able to slide this through. You got to kind of manipulate it a little bit as it comes through. Use your eyeballs a little. And it's almost through. And of course you put that washer on, as you saw as one before. Same thing applies here. And then this right here. Okay, if I can get my fingers to work, we'll be good. Okay, so, and of course, obviously, without saying, you would take your wrenches and tighten this up and get it nice and tight. All right, so that's the top piece, and basically for the standard 8-foot ceiling. Again, if you wanted to go with the 9-foot ceiling, you would use this, and again, this is sold separately. But this standard piece comes for the 8-foot ceilings. But the nice thing is we have the ability to go 8 or 9 foot, and some people do have 9-foot ceilings. So there are ranges in numbers in terms of the 8-foot. It'll actually, I don't have them in front of me right now, but there's ranges to handle the ceilings in case they're not exactly 8-foot or they're a little more than 8-foot, and the same thing applies for the 9-foot. If they're a little bit less than 9, we have ranges. And of course you have adjustments on the top, and as you'll see in a minute, you're gonna have adjustments on the bottom. So there allows for some flexibility there. There's a piece, as you can see, the metal piece here at the very end. You can't see the inch or so that it goes in. And this is actually put in place, it's manufactured such that it's put in place tightly and it will not turn. And basically what it's for is to allow for this particular screw to go into it. This is the whole tightening mechanism of the of the pole itself. So this, as you can see, is threaded. Of course, this piece is called a tube insert. It's threaded as well, and it essentially screws right into that, and I'll show you that in just a moment. In addition to this piece, it's really nice, we have a particular nylon washer or plastic washer, whichever, and it fits right over the end of this tip. And let me put it on there so you can see how it snaps right on there. And it won't come off. So it's got a nice secure fit. Anyway, that part will actually go onto this plate, which will go through here. And once that's up, you'll see that it'll turn, and it doesn't damage the plate that it actually sits on because of that nylon washer there. Okay. And there's another part to this which is kind of nice, and this is called a lock washer. And this is really important piece because it goes onto here, and once the screw is in place up into the tube, once this goes up into the tube, you don't want it to move once it's in place. Obviously, you're gonna fasten it at the ceiling, as we talked about before, with the screws that are going to go into the joist, but you are also going to tighten it from the bottom. So now I'm showing you how the screw actually threads into this bottom piece. This is obviously a very, very strong, solid rod of steel, and I'm just moving this lock washer down so that I can screw this in, because I know we have to take it in quite a ways. Now, if you don't want to do it by hand, you can take a screwdriver, put it through the hole at the bottom. This hole at the bottom, as I said before, is all about tightening the screw between the floor and the ceiling. And just so you know, as a customer, this portion, this tube insert is going to be pre-installed, so you won't have to mess with it. It'll be in there, it'll be fastened in, it'll be solid. We're going to put the screw in place too. We'll put it in a certain distance. You can obviously pull it out a little bit, adjust it accordingly, depending on your ceiling heights. And also the washer itself will be on the end, so that's not going to be an issue. Not that that's hard to do, but still, nonetheless, it'll still be done and ready to go. So there'll be a lot of stuff that'll be already done for you before you actually get the product, or when you do get the product. So you don't have to worry about, oh, how can I put that screw in there, or if you don't feel mechanically inclined, you know, that kind of thing. And we won't have you putting in the tube insert. It'll all be already in there and ready to go. So those are nice little things to know in advance. I just wanted to mention that it would help in terms of when you actually set this up, since it's an actually heavy, strong piece of steel, relatively heavy, strong piece of steel. I mean, needless to say, you want it to be strong and a little bit heavy as it's supporting your weight. When you stand up, it's a transfer pole, of course, and a transfer rail. But anyhow, what I was going to say here is that you can see that I put a measuring tape on this. Our ceilings are exactly 8 foot, or very close to 8 foot. And I'm setting this pole up such that you can see that it's very close to 8 foot. And I mean, you might want a little bit of play in there so you can adjust it out so that it won't just hit the ceiling when you take it up. But you can see that I gave myself about a 1/2 inch of play. So when I set this up, I'll have about a 1/2 inch that I can turn with the screwdriver right in here to make up the difference. All right. And so what that means is, part of what that means is you got to make sure that your holes at the top are where you want them as well. You do have adjustment at the top, as I said, and you have adjustment with this screw at the bottom. So it gives you a little play each way. But it's good to have the measurement so that you know that you're in the ballpark when you go to set it up. So another thing I forgot to mention too is this particular plate. As I already pointed out, the top piece that hits the ceiling has rubber on it. It's an 1/8 inch thick. Well, this bottom piece also has an 1/8 inch thick piece of rubber on it, which makes it nice because then you don't damage your floor. Say you set this up on a tile floor. Plus you want it to grip. You don't want it to slide. If it's steel, it could slide right on the floor. That's something you certainly want to avoid. This will grip and it'll protect your floor. You can go on carpet, of course, linoleum, tile, whatever wood, whatever you put it on, will protect the surface, as well as the ceiling being protected. So will the floor be protected. Okay, so we're ready to set it up. as you can see, these holes right here, this is for that particular piece over there. And you can see there's going to be 2 poles. So we're setting up a rail system. And you may be wondering what a rail system is, but basically it's to provide walking short-term ambulation transfers, and we're putting it right by the bed. So you have a solid steel structural support right by the bed. But anyhow, in terms of actually setting it up, here's the pole, here's the holes. Now these give you distance and height. We've set it up over on that one to be right in the middle on these 2 holes, okay? So another factor to remember too is that these distances between these 2 poles is significant, because in a moment, as I will show you, this is going to be the rail. Now the rail will set up on these 2 holes and these 2 holes, which will actually go right on top of this piece right here. You'll see what I'm talking about in a minute. But I need to set up the other pole right now before I get into the rail. So let me set this aside, and I'm going to take the pole itself and put it into that hole right there, and it'll be the little end point right there will go into that hole right there. And as we mentioned before, if this were a wood floor or some kind of tile, the rubber on here would prevent it from damaging or sliding, which is almost more important than the damage. I mean, obviously we don't want to damage anything, but the sliding, the rubber creates the friction. Well, on carpet, not really a big issue, but still nice to have. So here we go. I'm picking up this pole and I'm taking it over this way. Now, as I mentioned before, we've already kind of determined the close to the right height. Now, naturally, I'm by myself right now. But if you had 2 people, it would probably be a little better to use 2 people. But I'm going to show you that even with one person, you can set this up by yourself. So here I am, taking this over and putting it down into the hole right there. Can you see it going into the hole? It just slipped into there. I know it's in there because I'm turning it, and it's right there. Now, as you notice at the top, I've got it such that it's just about top right on there. Okay. Now remember, these holes, they have to be to the outside, because that's where the piece that's going to hold it, that piece right over there, is going to go right onto here. And that's what's going to hold the horizontal rail, which will give you, and the user, I should say, an ability to walk a little bit and to have some freedom about their bedside. Now at this point, I'm trying to line it up in terms of the right height, or the right level, I should say. So I do have a level, and I can look at the bubbles and move it accordingly. Now I'm going to have to loosen it a tad, because the rubber on the top is actually gripping like it's supposed to. But I'm going to loosen it. So I stick the screwdriver through the hole. See how it goes through? And then you just turn it a little bit. I'm turning it such that it'll loosen or go down. And now I'm going to see that I have even more, hopefully more play up here at the top. So we've gotten the pole into the hole, and it's standing up as straight as I can see it by eye. So what I do at this point is I have to go down where the tightening begins. And the tightening is down here, so I can hold the pole and put the screwdriver through the hole, just like so. Okay? And I'm just going to leave it there for a moment. Now I'm actually looking up a little bit, and I'm going to tighten it a little bit so we can start to get it close. But before I do that, I'm going to take a little measurement just to see that my eyes aren't deceiving me. So you want to keep it as level as you can, and then start to tighten it at the bottom. And here we go. We're going to tighten it up a little bit, and I'll just keep looking up. And you know what? My marks right there. There we go. Now it's starting to actually catch and tighten into place. It's a little loose on the one end, as you can see. Let me check my levels. And this one's great. And that one's actually pretty darn good as well. So let me just go ahead and tighten it and get it into place. And you have to almost keep looking up in order to see where your ceiling hits. And then it's tightened into place. I don't know how straight that is, but we're going to check. It's pretty good that way, and actually pretty good that way. So, in all honesty, it would help to do it with two people, because it is a little bit cumbersome to hold and tighten at the same time, but it can be done by one, as I just demonstrated. This piece that I'm holding in my hand right now is the part that's going to go right on here, and as we've already determined, we've decided to go with this level of height. Now we could have gone here, someone taller, and we could have gone here with someone lower, shorter, excuse me. But we've determined to just for today, we're going to go in the middle. And if you look over here, if you pan the camera over, you can see that we did the middle one. Another thing I want you to look at is just how strong this piece is. This was really put together well by the manufacturer, and they really beefed this portion up to make it such that when you're pushing down on that rail, this is going to be very, very solid, strong steel. It's been reinforced steel. It's just really a nice piece. And it has to be, because that's what we're after, is getting a nice solid piece. So anyway, the way these go on is we have a couple little screws here that would be included. You can see them. Not a real big deal in terms of putting them on. But now another nice feature too is you can see this is caved in a little bit. I don't know if you can see it, but it has like a little concave, just like this one has a little concave, and that's to allow for the pole or the roundness of the pole. Which is nice because then when you put that screw in there, it pulls it up nice and tight. Okay, so here we go. We got the screw. I'm going to put it through the bottom piece, and then what I do is I like to hold it with the screwdriver itself. You're ready to go. Obviously you want to get it in the correct one. That's the correct one right there. Just gotta look and see how it goes. Screws right on in there. And once you get the one, which I recommend you do the bottom one first, because you can see there's a little more product here to get around. It's not impossible. It's definitely doable, but it's just easier to do the bottom one first. So here we go, and put the top one in. You'll see that it's not, a big deal. Goes right in there once you get it started, and the screwdriver helps a lot to get it going in there. See how nice that goes in? And that's what you want to do, right like that. So you need to have the right screwdriver, Phillips screwdriver. Tighten it in there pretty good and tight. And it's nice and solid, and it's the right height. So now we're ready for the rail, and you can see we have it in place. These pieces have been put at the right level. You can see they used the middle two, just as the middle two over on the other pole. Now there are holes. If you look closely at the rail itself, there's holes right here. This allows for adjustment, where you could have the poles in further, in the middle like they are, or even maybe a little bit wider, depending on what you want, depending on what your circumstances are. So anyway, at this point I'm going to put the rail up on. Of course it's going to be holes down. Try and get it fairly close and set it into place. It's nice because, like I said before, this portion that it sits into is actually concave, or caved in, so that it'll actually accommodate the roundness of the pole itself. So you get your screws lined up, of course, your holes lined up, pardon me, and you put the screw right on in there. Tightens it up like a piece of cake, really nice. And of course you want to take the second one, and it should be nice and lined up, which it is. And it just tightens in there and just get it nice and firm. And it really holds on there really solid. Then obviously you have to do the same to the other side. The final thing you want to do is just to make sure that you get this lock screw into place. And what I mean by into place is it's way up here. Goes right up to the top of the pole, or actually that tube insert, which is at the very bottom of the pole. So it tightens right up there. You tighten it, Then you put your wrench on there, and you put the screw through here, kind of like this, and then you just tighten it some more. And that'll just force that lock screw to go right into place. And the reason for the lock screw is such that the pole will not move up and down. The lock screw will hold the pole from moving or adjusting in height, which is obviously very important in order for the pole to stay with the tension it needs.